Hello everyone. So today I'm going to talk about Fireball and this really awesome interaction it has with the new Timeless Jewel from Abyss, Reclaimed Malevolence. In case you didn't know, we have new Timeless Jewels. There's a bunch of them. This is the most rare of them, I suppose. You have to combine the others to make this one at the new Abyss boss, Zarak. And you get this thing, and this Timeless Jewel is super, super weird because when you put it in your tree, it creates like this path to the start, and it can replace an ascendancy node, which is absolutely crazy. There's a few options for it, but the one we're going to talk about today is the ephemeral bolts that I have right here, which it has a new stat kind of introduced this league called direct flight, and it basically what it does is whenever you have a projectile, it limits the distance the projectile can travel. So normally projectiles will go off screen and then disappear, or they'll dissipate over a duration. But with ephemeral bolts, they'll always go 5 meters at most from your character and then stop. So is that useful? Well, yeah, kind of. It sounds a bit weird, but it's pretty cool with certain skills, specifically Fireball. So if you don't know, the way Fireball works is, you shoot it out, it's a ball of fire, it goes off screen. We and then it explodes when it hits a wall or something. So you can see here, they're exploding. If you put this in, then you shoot the fireballs, they go 5 meters and then explode. So you don't need a wall to explode anymore. Why is this relevant? So the area explosions, you can see the giant explosion here from Fireball, overlaps. And does each explosion will do damage to the enemy. So if you have 5 projectiles, 5 explosions hitting the enemy, all of those do damage. Normally you would need a wall to get that overlap, which isn't realistic in most scenarios. But with ephemeral bolts, with the 5 meters direct flight, suddenly you have explosions anywhere you want on demand at a certain distance from your character. And as you can see here, I've also kind of scaled the area of these fireballs to the max so that like even if the boss was right on my character, it would still overlap and explode with all of these, which is pretty cool. So yeah, really, really powerful, really strong interaction. It turns Fireball into an absolute powerhouse of a gem. Like many thousands of percentage of damage effectiveness, like incredibly busted with the way this works. You can also make it work with Val Fireball, which I can show off here. If you're standing like right on top of the boss, like all of those will hit it, which is pretty cool. Um, that's a little harder to pull off, but it's pretty awesome. If you had a bit more AoE, I think it would get easier, but yeah, Val Fireball is pretty cool. But yeah, let me just talk about the build I've put together here for this interaction. It's like just a little bit of a disclaimer. Um, the way I made this build is not necessarily going to be the best way to build this. I already had a Sabo leveled, so I went with the Sabo, and I also had like the Jewel with the node in a good spot that I needed, so I went with the Sabo. There's some like okay synergy, but it's obviously not going to be the best ascendancy for like a self-cast spell build, right? Um, but it's what I had leveled, and it does work well enough. Uh, but yeah, I went for some interesting synergies. The cost to performance ratio of what I built here isn't quite there, but this interaction is best enough that you could definitely make it work on a budget and sort of optimize very well. It just does a ton of damage. But I really wanted to go all in on area of effect scaling to make it like really flashy and comfy. And you absolutely don't need to do that to make this interaction work. Um, Even with like the base area of the gem, if you're standing at a good distance away from the boss, it's going to overlap on them and hit. You do want a decent amount of AoE, but the amount that I have here is like complete overkill. This just means that you can stand on top of the boss and still hit like this, but that's really like completely unnecessary, right? Um, and to get this amount of AoE, I went with a Crest of Desire setup. Uh, Fireball has a base radius of 2.1 meters, as you can see here on the gem, but it also gets radius from quality. So I put it in here. with Ashes of the Stars, and we suddenly have a base radius of 3.8 meters, making it very easy to scale this AoE up, like very high. Without doing this, it's quite difficult to get enough AoE to get an explosion this big. But like I said before, that's not really necessary. I just went all in on it because it sounded fun to me. So, you know, that's what we're going with, right? And because of that, I got a Pearl of Swatha, this really neat new ring this league that can support skills socketed in my helmet. So I have greater volley and combustion on this. So this is actually a 3-link fireball and a Crest of Desire, which is pretty cool. This helmet can only have 1 socket. But it does add a lot of damage. And then I'm also equipping a Snake Pit so that we have Fork, just to help with the clear a little bit. Because as you can see, obviously if the projectiles are only going this far, they're not like off-screening things, even if the AoE is like really massive, to help out with that a lot. You're not getting like that crazy like projectile clear, right? But the Fork helps with that a little bit. It'll like propagate through packs. Because even though this only goes 5 meters, if it forks, those projectiles can go another 5 meters. So using Snake Pit for the fork. We have Pact of Beta, you know, a new Pact skill. Just for the extra projectiles, you can see when it triggers, which I have it triggering automatically in this trigger weapon, we get way more projectiles and we also get more damage. So this is a massive damage increase. It does come with these afflictions, but the build doesn't care about most of them too much, so I don't really mind that. And it is in a 4-second trigger weapon, which losing a bit of damage to use a weapon like this, but the convenience of having the pact like always triggered is really nice. And on top of that, because we were using Ashes of the Stars, it gets extra empowers from quality. So we actually get 11 empowers instead of like the base amount of like 6 to 8 or whatever, which is really nice for uptime. So this has really, really, really strong uptime. Another really nice synergy with this is because we're using Ashes, I also have Temporal Rift, which with Ashes and, you know, 60 quality or whatever, it causes debuffs to expire 62% faster, so that makes the pact a lot nicer to use. The debuffs don't last quite as long, they're not going to stack up quite as much as they normally would at their base like duration, so a nice little bit of synergy there. And yeah, that's kind of about it. The other stuff is just like Sabo. We have mines, like this Pyroclast mine is going to be lowering fire res by over 100% through the Sabo node, and I'm using Aspect of Solaris actually, so that's a really cool new thing that scales the effect of your exposure. Kind of neat. But most of that stuff isn't necessary. It's mostly just for bosses. You place that one mine, they could take a bunch of damage, shred their fire res, but for normal mapping, not too important. This is a Mage Blood character with all the normal Mage Blood stuff. Not really too much interesting to talk about there. It's really just to showcase the interaction. Absolutely, like I said, this character is really just kind of like a proof of concept character. It's not super optimized. I mean, the things it's optimized into are like massive AoE, which I thought was fun, but I don't think Crest of Desire is the way to go for this if you truly want a really strong build. But you do get to use a 6-link for like auras, which is kind of nice. I even have this Vestigial Lightning Coil with increased preservation efficiency, so I can fit all of this stuff, which is pretty cool. But yeah, what does it look like in a map? Well, let's just Sunday Strand real quick. And I think it is pretty cool. I'm definitely going to mess around with this a while, have a lot of fun with it. It kind of just, you know, blows up packs. Anything and everything just kind of dies because there's so many AoE overlaps, right? When it forks too, you get even more AoE and boom, boom, boom. I would like to have more cast speed. Happens, you know. Not quite enough cast speed, but what do you do? Cast speed can be kind of hard to scale. I really wanted to fit in like Coiling Whisper or something, especially on this setup where I have the extra 6-link, but just couldn't make it work with like Ashes, right? But it maps pretty well, pretty fast. If I had more cast speed, it would be even better. It's a little not quite enough right now, I feel like, but clear strands pretty well. Pretty fun. Very cool build. Um, Honestly, I think like this is going to probably be one of the builds of the league. Fireball with this new Timeless Jewel. Not this version, of course, but I truly think that this interaction is incredibly fun and incredibly powerful, so absolutely give it a shot. I do know the jewel is starting to go up in price a little bit, but and it's was already pretty expensive, so it's definitely not a budget build just because the jewel is so expensive. But yeah, definitely recommend it. I'm having a blast playing it, and I'll see in the next few days if I can maybe get a little bit of a more optimized character running with more damage, because this character's only like 30 million DPS or something, which for this interaction is kind of a bit low, I think. But very strong, very cool. Fireball is good for once. Packs are really cool. Work really well with this. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.